Okay, today is October 29th. No, it's, yeah, October 29th, 2019. It's the meeting of the Acushnet Board of Selectmen. Could I ask all to rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, first item on the agenda is a poll hearing.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion to approve
minutes.
Right, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda, including the minutes of the regular session Selectmen's meeting of June 11, 2019, as presented.
Second.
Has the change been incorporated?
Yes.
Yes, okay. Any further discussion?
I just gotta know what change it is later on.
I'm sorry. I'll tell you now. With regard to the paper streets, it said that Mr. Murray was the person interested in both of the streets, and he was only interested in, I believe it was Lambert Street. The other one, I think, is down here. So
Okay.
it sort of implied he was interested in both of those parcels, interested in buying both, and that wasn't really the case. Okay, back to the agenda. Meeting mailed is none. Okay, now, Eversource, welcome.
Thank you.
Eversource hearing, proposed request for permission to locate underground cables, conduits and manholes, Cameron's, south of Cameron's Way and Middle Road.
I'll just give you a little brief
Sure.
detail. Eversource Energy would like to install conduit along Middle Road, south of Cameron's Way. This install is to provide new service for the solar farm for the customer located at 588 Middle Road. This job should take no longer than a day or two, as long as there's no issues that arise. And that's pretty much of what we're doing in the town road taken. So anything else is going to be done on private property. And that would be, go ahead.
Good, I'll go, Mr. Gaspar.
Question?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So underground utilities, why underground utilities from that road to south of Cameron's Way, not above ground lines?
That was the best way for us to install the utilities, because the road is like about 11 feet wide. So there's really not a lot of room in that area. And there are poles already, I believe, from Middle Road going into that Parker Lane. I
Sure.
believe that's what the name is. So
So you're not cutting across Middle Road, or are you?
No, no.
So it's only on one
actually-
side of Middle Road, and it's on the property side that you're connecting to?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you.
And is that the dirt path that went to the old Pine Hill Pavilion? Is
Yes.
that- Okay.
Yes. That's the location of where we're installing our facilities in that private road.
Okay.
Is anyone here to speak for or against the proposal, or any comments to be added? Okay. Gentlemen, is there a motion?
Mr. Chairman, I'll make a motion to approve the proposed request from Eversource to locate underground cables, conduits, and manholes, including necessary and sustaining and protecting fixtures as presented.
And I'll second that motion.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. Thank you very much.
Thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I've got a motion. I move that the board open the public classification hearing to discuss the allocation of the local property tax levy among the property classes for fiscal year 2020.
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 I will now read the legal notice into the record. In accordance with Chapter 40, Section 56, as amended by Chapter 369 of the Acts of 1982 and Chapter 79 of the Acts of 1983 of the Mass General Laws, the Acushnet Board of Selectmen will conduct a public hearing on Tuesday, October 29, 2019, at 5:05 p.m. at the Acushnet Town Hall, Selectmen's Hearing Room, 122 Main Street. The purpose of the hearing will be to discuss the issue of allocating the local property tax levy among the property classes for fiscal 2020. Here to represent the Board of Assessors is Kelly Koska, Principal Assessor. Welcome,
Thank you,
Kelly.
Mr. Carreau. Before I begin the presentation on behalf of the Board of Assessors, I'd like to introduce myself. Again, I'm Kelly Koska. I'm the Principal Assessor in representation of that board at tonight's meeting. I'm here today to present through the Board of Selectmen the data associated with the fiscal 2020 a determination of the percentage of the town's property levy to be borne on each of the major property classes. I would appreciate if you had any questions to hold them to the end of the presentation. And furthermore, I'd like to add, I had a conversation earlier this morning with Selectman Gaspar when he called the office to clarify the percent allocation of the levy by classes. The share percentages of each of these major classes are calculated to the 1/10,000th place of 1 penny. When calculating the tax rate monetarily, this dispersion is not accurate. So in other words, when we did the calculation and it was, say, a 25% shift, and it looked like when you did the division, you were at like 0.223, the difference of the 3 points of the 1,000% is the 25 allocation. And when I go through the presentation, you'll understand what I'm saying. Okay, just a little background on how the setting of the tax rate is done. First of all, step one, we all start at the beginning of the year with the determination of the property tax levy for budgetary purposes. Then the determination of assessed values by my department with the certification by the Department of Revenue is ascertained. This year we were in a revaluation year for fiscal 2020, where it's looked at a little bit more insightfully, where public disclosure takes place. This year it did between 10/15 and 10/21. Basically, this gives the taxpayer an opportunity to come in and look at preliminary values which are certified by the Department of Revenue. Okay, now, in this slide you will see the total values of the property types by class. Residential, 91%, commercial, 3%, industrial, 2%, personal property, 4%. The total taxable value of the town for fiscal 2020, $1,289,364,481.
Personal properties, vehicles.
Excuse me.
Personal property would be vehicles or something?
No, personal property is tangible personal property subject to taxation for businesses or industrial, such as the LNG tanks, things of that nature.
Okay, thank you.
If you look at the bottom of the slide, it allocates the breakdown of the $1,289,364,481 into the 4 classes and distributed by percentage. Of course, the bulk of the town is residential at 91%, carrying the bulk of the levy by value at $1,164,948,616. If you look here, this is the levy limit, or how the levy limit is calculated for each fiscal year. For fiscal 2020, the levy base of fiscal 2019, for what needs to be collected or the revenues from taxation, $17,237,500. Of course, with Proposition 2.5, each subsequent fiscal year is allowed that increase. This year, using that number, it was $430,938. New growth for fiscal 2020. It's not yet certified, but has been submitted at $359,106. And this is derived by, of course, any new construction, subdivisions, additions, and personal property. I will get into more detail with that once we go into the breakdown for the what-if scenarios. And lastly, fourthly, the 2020 debt exclusion. That's being driven this year by the school renovation and the police station. Allocation by taxation of $447,498 for the total maximum allowable levy for fiscal 2020, $18,475,042. This number, it will be important, as that allowable levy is what's used for the dispersion of the levy limits per class. I know this is small print, and I apologize. If you look at this is a summary of tax rate options, which gives you the shift on the far left column with each class and levy amount broken down dependent on which shift is voted upon today for this fiscal year. If the town opted to go with a single tax rate, that top line, you see the allocation of each levy limit by class, you would look at $14.33 per thousand for each one of the classes. Again, just going down the chart that you can read, 5%, and you go to the far right, that would be the potential estimated tax rates. Historically, the Board of Assessors, for the past 2 fiscal years, has recommended 20% to the Board of Selectmen for the dispersion of tax shift levy. They did again so this year and formally recommend the 20% to the Board of Selectmen for their review today. And lastly, if you look, the tax shift trends for the past 4 fiscal years, straight across the board, shows a 25% tax shift that's been voted on by the Board of Selectmen for the town of Acushnet, and that's what the tax rate's been certified at, the 25% shift. That's it. That's my presentation. Furthermore, at the handout that I gave, that's colored in orange, and it's called Tax Shift
This one is
Possibilities.
the one that was,
It looks like this.
I've got it here. Yeah, I've got that. Okay, thank you.
Okay.
If you look at the top line, that's what was certified for fiscal 2019, the 25% tax shift at $14.18 per thousand and $18.20 per thousand for commercial, industrial, personal property. If you look along the top of the sheet, going from left to right, that gives the scenarios of real value that would be used, and then, of course, the tax dollars that would be computed based on those tax rates. The 2 yellow columns would be a parallel scenario of 25%, again, for fiscal 2020. Please keep in mind, if you look at the bottom, the difference of percent change of value. If you go down that list, residential has seen a 6% increase, commercial 6%, industrial 5%, personal property 11%. As an aside, the personal property has seen an 11% increase of growth due to, it's more the utilities which do the centralized value still, but the utilities showed a $9.1 million increase of value this year. So that's what's driving that number to 11%. That's all I have right now. Thank you very much for your attention. Do you have any questions for me?
Gentlemen, questions?
Mr. Chairman, if I could.
Mr. Gasper?
So on the last screen, you showed the last 4-year trend. That trend has been since 2013. It was changed from 120 to 125.
If we speculate out that far, Kevin, I chose not to because of the change in levy that's been so dramatic with the 2.5%. And if you see the levy of the town increases dramatically throughout the years, and our values have gone up as well. That's why I chose not to project out any further.
Yeah, no, that's
Go ahead.
fine. I'm just stating facts that since 2013, it's been 125. It was changed in 2013 from 120 to 125, according to the DOR. I've looked up all of the towns. Out of the 20 towns in Bristol County, only 5 have a flat tax rate in Bristol County. And all 5 of them have a lower commercial rate, obviously being said they have a flat tax rate. There's only 2 towns with a lower tax rate, commercial tax rate, out of the 20, which is Dartmouth and North Attleboro. So, and out of the 13 remaining communities in Bristol County, the average tax shift, the CIP rate, is 1.55, and we're at 1.25. So we're 1/4% below.
But if you're adding this data, but if you also look at the dispersion of value by class, that impacts the levy. Dartmouth has a much higher commercial industrial value.
I understand that.
Where,
I'm
I'm just being devil's advocate right now, where the resident of this town is 91%.
I understand exactly where we're at, 91%, and we want to, the Board of Assessors want to increase that burden 5% more onto the residential taxpayers, correct?
They don't want to, they're making an educated decision based on the numbers.
So,
Can I go? Ms. Koska, how do they justify that recommendation?
They justify it basically because from what I understand, when they look at the numbers, they feel it's more of a, for a better choice of words, I guess logical burden. Ultimately, in towns such as ours with a 91%, you don't usually see a split rate. I think the history of the split rate for the town of Acushnet came in the 90s when the industrial values came in for the LNG tanks on Peckham Road. And at that time, they were looking basically, probably for a better choice of words, really one-sidedly, and they saw quite a revenue maker by making it split and putting that burden on them. And once a town or a municipality goes with a split rate, it's very rare that they go back to a single. So historically, as Kevin has said, from fiscal 2013 to now, we've seen that 25% shift. If you look historically as well, the recommendation of the Board of Assessors has never been at the 25, they're usually at the 20.
We have this conversation every year.
that's correct.
Yep.
That is correct.
Well, it's my first year.
Go,
so-
Mr. DeRoche, you had
Well, I was
something?
just going to say, this is my first year, so.
Yeah, I work in Fall River where I think that it's 175. or-
I'm not sure, I can't
It's
attest to that.
I mean, very certainly different community with different,
1.72.
1.72, different makeup, and I know there's a lot of satisfaction when you get it from 173 to 172. I know the Chamber of Commerce battles hard to get it down in Fall River, but, and there are numbers here that would show if we went from 125 to 120, what...
Yeah, if you look at the sheet that's colored in yellow,
Yeah.
above the yellow line in the middle, you'll see the 120 shift that would change the tax rates for residential. If at 20%, $14.02.
$20 a house for the median home, or...
Well, just looking at the rates on the far left, $14.02 for the 20% shift residential to $13.95 for the 25% shift residential.
So it's an increase of about $50, but that's not true, because we've talked about this in the past. So right now, if we keep the rates to 125 shift, it looks like the residential will go down $71, commercial would go down $90. But we talked about this before, and you said that's not true, depending on the spending of the town, that will be change on your tax bills, is that correct?
That is absolutely correct. And if you look at the recap, usually we're a town that is 50-50, where 50% of our revenue comes from taxation and the other 50% from other revenue sources. This year it's looking a little different, where a little bit more is actually coming from other estimated revenue sources. I think Julie may be able to answer a little bit more specifically to that. I cannot, but that's when the numbers all combine and work with one another. That's what we're looking at this year. It's not a huge change, but that's what it is.
Every time I say, it looks like we're gonna save on the tax rate, when I get my tax bill, it goes up by $100. So the average, if I look at my own tax bill over the years, is basically between $100 and $130 a year increase. Even though we come in and we say, oh, it looks like by the rate being lower, it's gonna decrease by $70.
Not
It's
necessarily,
true.
because values go
That's
up
correct.
if tax rates go down.
That is
It's an
correct.
opposite relationship.
So the correlation between these numbers that we're being shown today versus what our tax bill will define, our actual tax bills, not our preliminary tax bills, will define, is two different stories, correct?
Not necessarily, because you're comparing apples with oranges. If you look at value, as that's why it's written at the bottom with a 6% increase, you gotta take that into consideration. So for example, if your property was valued, say, in fiscal 2019 at $225, if you add 6%, let's say, make it easy, 10%, you're gonna add $22,500 to it. That bumps you right away $20,000 more at $14.18 per thousand using last year's rate. So that's the difference in monies. You're looking at it apple to apple, you gotta look at it apple to orange, because we're looking at two different scenarios of money.
I'm just looking at how much money, more money's coming out of my
That's the
pocket.
bottom line.
Yeah.
That's the bottom line for most
I don't
taxpayers.
think anybody
Totally
really cares,
understandable.
other than my tax bill went up again. That's
I get
basically
it.
what I hear all the time, right?
But unfortunately, residential, like we talked about earlier this morning, how those values are driven is, again, it's sales. A willing seller is willing, a willing buyer is to give for a willing seller. That sets the precedent of a market, and that's the market. And we're seeing trending actually even going higher than the analyzing that was done for this data.
Of course, I mean, you have the central banks in this country lowering interest rates. Why we continue going to zero is beyond me, which makes people's borrowing power that much greater, so they're willing to spend $300 on a $250,000 home, right? So it's artificially inflating asset prices, what central banks are doing, and we're gonna pay the consequences eventually for it, so.
I can't attest to banks. That's out of my wheelhouse.
I'm not gonna go there, but moving on. Anything else?
No?
Ms. Koska, anything?
No, I'm all set. Do you have any other questions for me? Oh, this visual aid was helpful this year.
It was, absolutely.
I'll have-
Yeah, the material's always
I'll-
good when you do this every, when you do this every year. It's always very well done, thank you. Am I supposed to read this?
Can I make a
All right.
motion?
Yeah, I've got motions here that have been prepared. I guess this is for,
This is what you would,
I do this?
well, you guys want to.
Where do you-
That's why I was gonna read the motion, but anyways. I move that the board adopt a split tax rate to reduce the share of the tax levy that is paid by the residential and open space property owners and shift those taxes to commercial, industrial, and personal property taxpayers at the shift percentage of 125% presented by the, as discussed.
I'll second the motion.
Further discussion?
No?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye?
Any opposed? Anything else I need to read? Oh, yeah, I move to close the public hearing. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.
Thank you, Ms. Koska.
All right, next agenda item. Interviews with police chief candidates. I'd like to welcome Sergeants Thomas Carreau, Gary Coppa, and Christopher Richmond at the meeting today. As we're all aware, our chief is retiring. I think Friday is your last official day, is that correct? Or-
That is correct. I
It's
thought we
sim-
were going to ask for some civil service lists tonight.
I think that's further on in the agenda. right?
Okay,
Do you want to
fantastic.
do that? You're here anyway, right?
I'm here for the duration.
Okay, then, all right. Yeah, we're gonna do that. I think that is on the agenda further down.
Yeah, maybe you should do it first, that way it gets it out of the way, and
Okay.
then we can just focus on,
Let's, all right.
unfortunately, it was under old business.
He's the one keeping you waiting, not us, all right?
I have till 5:30.
Chairman,
I can get this done in 5 minutes.
I'll make a motion to take the meeting out of order.
Okay, yep, second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, gentlemen. In front of us, we have several civil service issues to consider. First one would be a Form 35 transfer for Officer Craig Pimentel from Acushnet to Taunton, effective November 10th.
If we say no, he can't leave, is that the way it works, or?
That would be the way it would work. However, you have past boards had a policy that if they worked 3 years after graduation, that you would allow that.
Okay.
So it's entirely up to you.
Just
if
trying
you
to,
wanna-
just trying to understand. Now, I'm not gonna be that guy, but just trying to
You can
understand.
be.
I'm not gonna
It's
be that guy.
perfectly fine, Mr.
Just trying to
Cabral.
understand how we don't wanna lose a good officer.
No, we do not. So we would need a motion on that.
Need a motion,
Yeah.
Gentlemen?
Well, unfortunately, Mr. Pimentel, he's a good young man. You know, I seen a bright future for this gentleman in the town of Acushnet, but unfortunately, we can't stop officers from taking jobs other places, so I'll make a motion to accept the resignation of Officer Craig Pimentel as presented, with regret.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. A requisition of 5 part-time police officers. Next
That would
item.
be the next thing. The new chief has a lot of work to do. So we would like to set the table as best as we can for the new chief. And I'm recommending that we start that process. One of the things we want to do is get that moving.
Okay.
Who was the 5?
Gentlemen, is there a
Yep.
motion?
I'll make a motion to contact civil service and call for the list of 5 part-time police officers as presented.
Second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes, thank you.
Would also make a motion that you consider requisitioning the sergeant's list. My hope is that tonight you promote a chief, which will create a vacancy for a sergeant. And again, we're looking to set the table and get the chief ready for that appointment as well.
Mr. Chairman, they've already gone through the assessment center, is that correct?
No, we did the sergeant's exam the old-fashioned way, which was just simply a test. But we do have a list of candidates
Okay.
that list is good for, I believe, another 18 months. So
Okay.
you'll be making an appointment based off of
Didn't we
that.
talk about doing it for sergeants in the future?
Correct.
Assessment centers?
That will be
Future.
future,
Chief,
if they so choose.
from one of these 3.
Right. Maybe a deputy
Okay.
chief, stuff like
And this
that.
doesn't commit us to adding that position. This just,
You'll be down that position come
yes, yeah, I
tomorrow
know,
morning.
I know. This doesn't commit us to adding that position, though, correct?
No, it does not.
Okay. I'm not saying anything, don't read anything into that comment. I'm just trying to understand what it is we're doing and what we're not doing, so thank you.
Absolutely.
Gentlemen, is there a motion?
For the requisition of a sergeant?
Yes.
Is that all you need, chief?
That's all the next chief will need, yes.
You are the current chief. Is
That's
that
what
what
I
you're
need.
asking?
That's what I'm
I make
asking
that
for this
motion.
evening.
I'll second the motion.
Second. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes, thank you.
Thank you.
Is
All right.
that it?
Just make sure we have a spot for tomorrow.
Okay.
Let's take it easy. You're here till November 3rd. We still have a few days here.
All right, so, again, we're here tonight to interview the police chief candidates, and the 3 sergeants are present here. Just apologize for, we take this very seriously, and we intended this to be a one-issue meeting, and we kept looking at October 29th, saying this is the only thing we want to do, this is all we want to do, and, the tax hearing apparently couldn't wait, and moving the telephone pole apparently couldn't wait. And then the chief cut in front of you, and apparently that couldn't wait, so we had to do some other things that we didn't anticipate. But this is something we, as a group, have taken very seriously. We've had a lot of discussions, and, wanted this meeting to be focused on interviewing you all, and making that the sole purpose of the meeting. So we know you've all been through the assessment center. We put some questions to you, which you've responded to. We've all read those responses. The third and final part of the process is some questions that we've come up with. We've got 3 questions and an open response question. And you don't have these questions in advance. And that's the way we wanted it. We wanted to, throw the question out and get you, to respond on your feet. So what we'd like to do is we'd like to excuse 2 of you and have 1 remain, and ask one at a time those questions. And it'll be timed. The first question's 10 minutes. The second 2 are 5, and the final 3 are 5 minutes each, so it's 25 minutes. We'll run a timer on it. Give you a 1-minute warning. If you think a 2-minute warning's better, you'll get as much warning as you want, but we need to hold you to that time frame. You'll all get the exact same question. You'll all have the exact same amount of time to respond to it. What we've decided would be the most fair is to have you pick a number for your slot, that we wouldn't do it alphabetically or reverse alphabetically. We would try to make it as random as possible. So we've got 3 tickets in a little cup, and this will determine the order that you respond in. We'd ask that the 2 of you that aren't asking questions go up to the finance committee meeting room. We'll send the chief up to get you when it's over. This is an open public meeting. You don't have to leave, but we prefer if you did. So just in full disclosure, pick a number. Pick a number, and somebody's got a 1.
Not me.
That's me.
You got a 1, all right, you're first up. So this, again, 25 minutes, give or take, we're gonna run a timer on it. We'll send it, who's got the 2? All right, and you've got the longest night. So we'll send the chief up to get you when you're all set, and, okay? So, any questions while we get you all together, or?
So after they answer the questions, you want them to remain here?
Yeah, that'd be fine, sure, why not?
Okay.
I would leave that to the 3 sergeants.
Yeah, what do you-
Interview, and if they're not, look.
Yeah,
one
no,
guy-
I think no, I think just the one answering
It's up to the
questions,
3.
I think.
It's up to the 3. I mean,
Yeah.
if one guy's gonna be down here solo without anybody behind their back, if they feel, the other 2 feel more comfortable not having anyone behind their back while they're answering questions, I think it's fair to ask the 3 sergeants.
Let's have
how
it
they would
consistent,
prefer
let's have it
it.
consistent for all 3. Let's have it the same for all
That's what I'm
3.
saying. I mean,
Yeah.
if they wanna
I'll
leave
go
it
back to the
alone.
room.
Yeah, just one at a time down here, I think, so it's the exact same thing for all 3, we don't have somebody looking over your shoulder. Somebody drop their scales.
Yes.
Sergeant Richmond, welcome. All right, so we've got 3 questions, and thank you for your submittal, reviewed it, so appreciate it. So first question, I'm going to ask you the question. I'll start the timer, this is a 10-minute. How much of a warning would you like to?
2 minutes.
2 minute, be fine, okay. So it's a hard stop at 10 minutes, though.
Okay.
We're apparently not allowed to ask you side questions. We can ask you to embellish on to the script.
Okay.
This is it's a multi-part question. If you want me to repeat it, I will. Timer doesn't start until you're comfortable with what I throw at you, okay?
Okay.
Okay, as chief of police, what can we expect from you in the first 6 months on the job? And these are all related. What organizational changes would you make, if any? What are your plans, if any, to reduce overtime costs within the police department? Let me read it again, there's a lot there. What can we expect from you in the first 6 months on the job? What organizational changes would you make, if any? What are your plans, if any, to reduce overtime costs within the police department?
Okay,
You good?
I'm good.
Okay, timer.
Okay, just like to thank the board. I'm not going to waste time with pleasantries. I'm going to get into the meat and potatoes.
Thank you.
First 6 months, the chief kind of tipped the hand a little bit. It's going to be a little bit of a whirlwind in regards to adding personnel to the department. In addition to what the chief talked about, in regards to adding 5 part-timers, to replenish our ranks from which we draw our full-timers and promoting a sergeant. We also are going to be replacing a full-time administrative assistant, and also we've solicited applications for 2 additional full-time dispatchers. So the next chief walking in the door is going to be hiring probably between 10 and 12 people in a relatively short amount of time. Within that 6 months, my goal would be to have all these people hired, trained, and in place doing their jobs as I see fit. That's going to be there's going to be some heavy lifting there. I'm all about getting my hands dirty, getting in there and doing what we got to do to learn the job, get them to learn the job and get going. Other things that I think is, as far as organizational changes, within that 6 months, I think that's what we're talking about. There's a lot there, but organizational changes, thinking of a position, dividing up a position that we once had. Once we had a firearms licensing officer and a part-time detective. That was one position, and a detective. We lost that position about 10 or 12 years ago due to budget cuts. I'd like to reintroduce that firearms position and maybe add some administrative duties to take some of the relief out of the detective division. The job has become highly technical for both patrol and detectives. We need to train our people well, and we need to, as much as we like to be generalists and know a little bit about a lot, it's becoming fast that we need to know a lot about a little. In other words, we need to have those specialists within the departments, and I think adding that position to start within the 6 months would benefit the department greatly. A little beyond the 6 months, at the end of the day, the Acushnet Police Department's a paramilitary organization with structure and rank. We've existed, unlike many other departments in this area, with only 3 ranks: chief, sergeant, patrolman. The time has come that we need to explore, an executive officer, a clear-cut second in charge, that would be non-union and part of management to help the chief do his job. But that's probably a little further out than that 6 months, realistically. But it's something that we definitely have to have a conversation about. As far as other organizational changes, not necessarily positions, but some responsibilities that traditionally have lied with certain people, or certain positions, I should say. I think in the effort to share the wealth, so to speak, and try to keep officers interested and fresh, some of the jobs that have traditionally been held by a few people can be spread out amongst patrol, and give them some job interest. I mean, we just talked about Officer Pimental leaving. He is what we want in a police officer. Unfortunately, he's made a decision to move on for a variety of reasons. At the end of the day, we're not going to be able to compete with some towns as far as salary goes, but I think we can make the job more rewarding, more interesting, especially for the younger generation, if they're afforded the opportunity to do more than just regular patrol work, as a means to, bettering themselves, to perhaps prepare themselves for other positions within our department. As far as overtime goes, I'm aware of the philosophy adopted in the financial investment made in the current police contract to add an officer to each shift with the intent of not replacing the first person out so as to reduce overtime. I'm in favor of that. Unfortunately, we have to get these people in place to be able to do that, and I think we're well on our way to doing that. Part of having the extra person on the shift would allow some of these people, when they were all there, some of these people to do some of these other duties that I've talked about, whether it be working in the property room, doing firearms work, doing court, prepping video requests for court and whatnot. I'm cautious. The first person out has been talked about for a number of years. Back when I negotiated a few contracts back in the early 2000s. I'm cautiously optimistic that it'll work. Unfortunately, it needs to work within the language of the contracts that held by both unions there. And to simply say an extra person across the board and not replace that person every time, I'm not sure that's that blanket. The devil's in the details, as they say. I'm willing to work and make that work for everybody, so we have the officers on patrol in the community when we need them to be.
You got 5 minutes left, you don't have to use it.
Okay, no, I'll continue if I get the time. I talk fast.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
talk a little slower.
You can talk fast, but you don't have to if you don't.
No,
want
no,
to.
I'll talk- no.
Because we allot 10 minutes, doesn't mean you have to take the 10 minutes.
I'll just kind of end this topic with this. We have excellent, and this is not just me saying this to say this, we have an excellent cadre of officers and civilian, the men and women of the department are what make the department, better than 88% of the budget is spent on personnel, and we got to make sure that, 88% of our attention is spent on developing those people and retaining those people. And I truly believe about that. I truly believe that. I get along with everyone there. There's no one there that I don't like. I'm able to work with everyone. Everyone in there is capable of something. When I first started and first got on the job, I was told by somebody, hey, you can learn something from everybody within the department. There was people, I'm starting out new, and you kind of say, I'm not sure about this guy, I'm not sure about that person. But as I've worked my career, you realize that everybody has a strength, and it's the chief's job, I think, administration's job, to put them in a position to, use that strength to help the department in the town. I think that's it. I might stop babbling if I continue on.
Thank you.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you.
Sergeant Richmond,
Yes,
in your cover letter, you touch upon policing into the 21st century.
yes.
What's your opinion about body cameras and dash cams? And do you have any intention of implementing them into the Acushnet Police Department?
Well,
That's a 5 minute, and I'll give you a warning at
Yeah.
1.
okay.
Yep.
Thank you. The issue of body cams, cruiser cams, that type of thing, that's certainly a hot button topic in law enforcement today. There's pros and there's cons. The obvious pros is that you capture video evidence that can be used in court. There's, in theory, both officer and the person they're interacting with will be on better behavior, so to speak, because they're being recorded. They know they're being recorded. In theory, also, if there's accusations of misconduct or improper, officer misconduct, you can go to the video to review it. Those are all obvious benefits. It increases the transparency and responsibility that we have to the community. On the flip side, some of the cons would be, the cost and actual implementation of the program. To buy the cameras, it costs something to maintain the storage. I know a little bit about the technological aspect based on being the department's technology officer for the past 20 plus years. There are also arguments that against where, when you're talking to a witness, if they realize they're being recorded, they might be less likely to talk to you because they know they're being recorded. With all this in mind, there's pros and cons. I'm not opposed to them, but I think within the police department, there is money, at this point, there is money that can be spent in other areas before we just jumped right into the body cams program.
Because right now, there are no dash cams in the cruisers?
Correct, sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, you go down. I just want to catch up with my technology here. All right, third question.
Full
Mr. Gaspar.
disclosure, just because we as individuals asking questions doesn't necessarily mean that they're coming from that individual, the question.
Yeah, random.
Right.
Full disclosure.
Yep.
Okay?
Mr. Gaspar.
So as a detective, I would say this isn't your question.
As chief of police,
They were close, huh?
to whom do you believe you are first and foremost responsible?
5 minutes.
As the chief of police, philosophically speaking, the police are responsible directly to the community and the public in which they serve. We derive our ability to do our job, legitimacy, so to speak, from the belief that the general public believe that we're doing our job in a rightful and just way. Practically speaking, the three of you, as duly elected officials by that community, by that public, I'm answerable to you. As an appointed position, the town administrator, I would be answerable to that person, but I'm also answerable to the men and women in my department as well. So it's a careful balance, but the ultimate responsibility is to the community, and like I said, practically speaking, is to the three of you and Ms. Hewitt.
Thank you.
About 4 minutes left, you good?
Yeah, I think so.
All right, final question. And this open response, 5 minutes. Do you have anything else to add to help us in our consideration of you for the role of police chief? 5 minutes, open response,
Okay.
whatever you want to go.
First of all, I'll take the opportunity now to thank the board for giving the department, myself, this opportunity to present ourselves before you. As you're going to see when you talk to the other two candidates and the fourth candidate that didn't make the cut to come here, the police department has very, very qualified people to lead the department. I'd be proud to follow any one of the other 3 people who participate in the assessment center, and I'd be just as proud to lead them. That being said, I genuinely, this is a culmination of a just about a 25-year career to have this opportunity here. I was before the board 15 years ago as a candidate for police chief, 10 years on the job, and I can tell you right now that I am a much better candidate than I was then. I understood why things happened the way they did back then, but I've taken my lumps both figuratively and literally over the years, and I've taken what my parents and my family's instilled in me to, keep the nose to the grindstone, do your job, keep plowing ahead, don't get caught up in, I guess would be called the drama now of other people's opinions. Don't worry about this. My dad always said, hey, don't worry about everybody else, worry about what you do. And if you're doing your job to the best of your ability, then you shouldn't have anything to worry about. Like I said, anybody that knows me, I'm straight to the point. I can start talking, but then I might start going off into left field, and I might, take away from the answers I've already given.
Okay.
Well, very good.
You good?
Yes, I am.
All right. Thank you, Sergeant Richmond.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Appreciate
you
it.
very much, Sergeant.
We're going to repeat the process and hopefully make a decision tonight. So
Okay.
appreciate your time and your hard work in getting here. We know it's a multi-step process.
Yeah,
So
no, thank you. And I get that,
Thank you.
the assessment center, that's the way to go,
Yeah.
in the future.
Thank you, Sergeant.
Who's number 2? I don't. Who's number 2?
I will find out who number 2 is.
Okay,
and maybe
right,
that'll
yeah,
go walking away with you pulling numbers. I think they were happy they weren't number 1. And then you went over and started talking to them, so. We'll see when they come down the stairs.
Kevin, give me the name when he comes on. I don't
I will. I guess you got the good one.
That's the music playing right now.
Did I say officer?
When you like the hotel music.
What?
Careful,
When
now,
you like
you're
the
on
hotel
camera.
background music. While we wait.
It's gotta be nerve-wracking for all of
Oh,
them.
of
Yeah.
course it is.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's not an easy decision for us either.
Oh, they're all great candidates. I was so impressed with the materials they gave us.
Did you get to read it?
I thought you were talking to
They
me.
made 4 copies? I would hope you read, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, no, I did. That's why I thought you asked me. Of course I did, yeah. 'Cause I was very impressed with the quality, with the options we've got.
It was nice because you got to actually feel their expressions from
Yeah.
inside, outside of what we're doing today. Verbally is one thing, but when they're writing things, they're showing emotions, and you get to
Yeah.
extract that out of
No,
some
I think
of
this
some
process, I think we've
Some
done.
of what I read was very telling, and it was very promising. I liked what I heard, so, when I
I
read
think
it.
all of this gives us a good, the assessment center and the written responses and the verbal presentations, I think gives us a good sense of what the candidates look like. Sergeant Coppa, welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, Sergeant Coppa.
Thank you.
So, just refresh your memory on what we're doing. We get 4 questions, we have 3 questions. The 4th one's going to be open response.
Okay.
So the first question is a 10-minute response, and each of the following 3 or 5, we're going to run a timer on it.
Okay.
With the 10-minute question, there was a 2-minute warning. With the others, there'll be a 1-minute warning. If
Okay.
you want more, I can give you whatever you want.
No, that's fine.
The first question is multi-part, so I'll repeat it a couple of times for you.
Okay.
The others are more straightforward, but the timer won't start until you've got the question. So, and I'll repeat it a couple of times. And just the other thing, the last question is you'll have the ability to say whatever you want to say. So if you got some general comments you want to make, that'd be the opportunity to do that.
Okay.
So first question. As chief of, and this is multi-part, as chief of police, what can we expect from you in the first 6 months on the job? What organizational changes would you make, if any? What are your plans, if any, to reduce overtime costs within the police department? I'm going to do that one more time, just because there's a lot there.
Okay.
As chief of police, what can we expect from you in the first 6 months on the job? What organizational changes would you make, if any? What are your plans, if any, to reduce overtime costs within the police department? And if you're ready, I'll hit the timer.
Okay.
Repeat it again, you good?
I'm all set.
All right, so 10 minutes with it, I'll give you a 2-minute warning. And
Okay.
you don't have to use all the time, your call. All of it or as little as you need.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me here tonight. This is the highlight of my career, something I worked for my entire adulthood in the town of Acushnet, so thank you. To answer the question, I believe we have a lot of moving parts going on right now in the police department. Obviously, we've had one promotion for chief in the last 15 years, I want to say. Was the last one 16 years, chief? So with that being said, when you take from the top of an organization such as a police department and you have to promote from within, you would also have to replace a sergeant's position. We've taken steps here tonight, I believe, by requisitioning the list of civil service. There's already a list in place. So one of the first things we would have to do is backfill the sergeant who takes over for the chief. That would be a very quick process, something we'd have to work on right away. We also took steps tonight as hiring 5 part-time employees. That's crucial. That's crucial moving forward, that we maintain the pool of part-time personnel. And by having part-time personnel, it's almost like a minor league system in the baseball league. You get to see your officers before they actually, you commit all the resources to them to get them full-time trained. You get to see their weaknesses, their strengths, whether or not they're a good fit for the department before investing all kinds of money into them. So we've already taken steps to do that tonight. I'm sorry, I'm a little bit nervous.
So are we.
Yeah. As far as organizational changes, one thing I would want to do immediately is the dialogue with the Board of Selectmen is seriously consider hiring a deputy chief. I think that's something that's strongly needed. Over the last 15 years, I've heard the chief of police come in front of you and tell you how busy he is, because he is busy. There's a lot he's got to oversee and a lot he's got to do, but he's also said he's been so busy that he has a hard time even keeping up with the log. That's a must for the police chief, has to know what's going on in the community. And if he's that busy, we have to provide help for that position. Also, by having a deputy chief, you have another individual in the department that's outside of the union personnel. They have the same skin in the game as you do. That's one of the things that is a sounding board of ideas of somebody else that has very similar experiences and has similar goals as you. As far as reduction of overtime, having, like I was talking about earlier, the hiring of part-time personnel allows a lot more flexibility in reducing overtime. The town has recently hired 3 full-time officers. That's helped to fill vacancies that we've had to cover with overtime. And we depleted our part-time personnel, so we had no part-time officers to put in those positions to cover those shifts at straight time. If we have part-time officers available, it gives us flexibility to fill those vacancies, which prevent the overtime. Now, we're gonna be able to eliminate overtime completely? No. I'm not gonna sit here and tell you that we can. If we hire another guy for each shift and not replace them, we still have 3 officers on the road. 3 officers on the road is a bare minimum. Having 4 on the road is something that we should be striving for. But to do that is an expense when we hire these officers and train these officers. So we have to weigh the cost value of putting someone through an academy versus, backfilling with part-time, less experienced personnel. Because if you're a citizen of Acushnet and you call for the police department, chances are there's something dramatic going on with your life. You want a well-trained officer going there. So you have to weigh that balance of, having enough part-time personnel and having too many part-time personnel. So one of the things I would suggest is we continue to have a steady level of part-timers, maybe 7. Using those 7, filling in vacancies, seeing what they offer the town, what they don't offer the town, provide them some training, see if they're motivated. Then you promote them to full-time status. That's basically what I would be doing the first 6 months.
You have 6 minutes left. You can use it or not use it. And I think we allowed too much time for this question. But
I'm all set.
They all talk fast, to be honest. Mr. Jim, maybe we should let them know that with the board, so Mr. Coppa's, I apologize, Mr. Chairman, for butting in, but I just feel like maybe, I don't want any of the candidates to come downstairs and think that we talked to the other candidates and we didn't talk to you, so I don't know if you explained that to them, that we would not be
Yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, we can't, we
would
just gotta
not
stay
be going
focused on
there.
the
So
question.
I don't want any one of you three sergeants to come down and thinking that they didn't say a word to me.
No, that's
What the hell is wrong? There's
Yeah,
nothing wrong.
we were told we gotta stay to the script.
We're just trying to keep it as clean as we can, and as less fault-proof as we can, right? So we're trying to be disciplined, just as you guys are as officers of the law. We're trying to do our part now in the hiring process. It's very crucial we get this right.
Right.
So we're trying to be
Well,
cordial.
one thing I would say is, the first 6 months is going to be very hectic. I mean, we got the budget cycle coming in, so that's another thing that has to come into place. It would be a new experience for all three of us, so there would be some learning curve there. So the first 6 months for the next chief is going to be very, very hectic. Trying to get the department going on the course that they want the department to go to. And there's going to be a lot of communication between the next police chief and the Board of Selectmen. There's going to be some eye-opening experience from both sides, I'm sure, on what is needed. And so it's going to be very busy for the next chief.
Thank you, Sergeant Coppa. Question 2, Selectman DeRoche.
Yes, good evening, Sergeant Coppa.
Good evening.
Evening. What is your opinion concerning body cams and dash cams? And do you have any intention of implementing them into the police department?
Oh, that's an interesting
5 minutes, I'll give you a 1 minute.
That's interesting. Well, like anything else, there's value in both. The implementing of dash cams and body cameras is something to protect the officer against liability, also protect the officer against frivolous complaints or false complaints. But with that, there's also the hidden cost of, you also have to maintain that footage. You can't just you implement this policy and not be able to have something in place that 2 years down the line, when the civil suit's filed, we need to copy that video and we don't have it. You have to have, and there's a cost in that. There's a cost in maintaining that additional footage and logging it and keeping up to date with it. So it's one of those things that you would have to look at. And you also have to look at needs, other needs in the department that we need prior to body cameras. We have a very low, as far as the police department, very low complaint log, I guess, because a lot of our officers, we really have been successful in keeping that to a minimum. If it ever became an issue, by all means, you would have to go down body cameras and cameras in the cruiser as well. But if you implement those things, just make sure there's hidden costs and make sure we're able to keep up with the costs in that.
Very good. Thank you.
Good time.
I'm good.
You good? Okay. Just to let me know. All right, question 3, Mr. Gasper, is a 5-minute question, 1 minute warning again.
Okay.
I'm gonna go full disclosure, just because we're asking these questions doesn't mean it's necessarily our questions that we're asking, okay? I think maybe we'll introduce that at first for
Yep.
the next candidate. As Chief of Police, to whom do you believe you are first and foremost responsible?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
As Chief of Police, to whom do you believe you are first and foremost responsible?
Oh, that's easy. That's the citizens of Acushnet. I mean, as Chief of Police, you're essentially in charge of public safety with the fire chief of 11,000, close to 11,000 people. You have to be accountable to them. You have to answer to them. You have to adapt to their needs. What their needs are your needs, and it's your job to provide for them. I take the job serious. I mean, every day I go to work, when I work the night shift, the 4 to 12 shift, the chief's home, and I'm left with myself and protect people with this cushion, and it's 11,000 people. That's what I'm responsible for. Make sure that we make it through the shift and nobody gets hurt. So my ultimate responsibility is the taxpayers of Acushnet. And by the way, I feel the same way when it comes to budgeting. You know, when you do the budget, you're answering to the needs of the community. It is not the wants of what Gary Coppa wants. It's what the town can afford and what the town needs. So it's the same thing. You're accountable to the town, the taxpayers.
You got time, you good?
I'm good.
All right, thank you. All right, final question, back to me. This is open response, 5 minutes. Do you have anything else to add to help us in our consideration of you for the role of police chief? Why are you the person we should choose? 5 minutes.
Well, this exercise that you gentlemen gave me was kind of eye-opening, kind of refreshing. It was something for me to reflect back on my career, where I came from. Challenges I've met, problems we've had. At the end of the day, my entire adulthood has been dedicated to the public safety of Acushnet. I started with the fire department. I worked as an EMT in the emergency room. I became a part-time police officer, worked 3 years, even though I was part-time, 40 hours a week with no benefits, different shifts. I was appointed as a police officer. I became a sergeant. I was in detectives. I've had some very rewarding cases that I've worked on. I've had a bunch of opportunities that I think I could help deliver to the younger guys and have them provide the same path that I've had. With that being said, I have a vested interest in this town. I'm a lifelong resident. My wife's a lifelong resident. We're raising our kids here. With the personnel we have in place, which I think is outstanding, I think I can bring this department with my leadership to the next level. And that's why I want to be police chief. I'm all set.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sergeant Coppa.
Thank you, Sergeant Carreau. Appreciate it. And send Sergeant Carreau, I guess, is last. Could you
I'll go
send-
get Good job. You may have gone around.
Which, yeah, we'll start.
Just did it at the beginning.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, well, let's do that.
Full disclosure, no
This
names,
is-
no.
Yeah, we assign questions and, although your question's fine, it's a generic.
No, I understand. I
Yeah.
just want to put it out there, just, in case some people at home are thinking that, you can ask a different question or whatever.
Yeah. No, we-
Just
we-
random questions. We went through a pool.
Yeah, so for the people watching at home, we went through, we identified maybe 10 questions, and then we decided some of them were going to be asked in writing, and, no, not 10, 8. Some would be better suited to writing, some would be better suited to be asked verbally, and then once we set the 4 questions, or was it 4 in writing, what was left, we decided we were going to ask verbally, and then we sort of randomly chose which ones we'd each end up with, so. Sergeant Carreau, welcome.
How are you?
Sergeant Carreau.
How are you?
Very good, and you?
I'm good, thank you. Good.
All right, so I'll give you the overview. 4 questions. 3, we're each going to ask 1 question. The last one's an open response, just, why should you be police chief? So that's an open response at the end. So if you got just general statements you want to make, that's the best time to make them. Another disclaimer that we've sort of raised every single time is that these questions were assigned to us arbitrarily, so just because a person's asking the question, it's not necessarily something they want to
Coming
ask, or
from
it's
that
their
person.
idea, or it's coming from any particular angle. We just, so first question's 10 minutes, the remaining 3 or 5 each. First question's multiple parts, so I'll read it to at least twice and make sure you got it.
Sure.
And that's 10 minutes. I won't start the timer till you say go. I'll give you, on the 10-minute, 2-minute warning. On the 5-minute questions, a 1-minute warning. And you can use as much or as little as the time you get available to as you want, okay? You good?
I'm good.
All right, first question. Let me get my timer ready. And this is a 10-minute question again. As chief of police, what can we expect from you in the first 6 months on the job? What organizational changes would you make, if any? What are your plans, if any, to reduce overtime costs within the police department? I'm going to do that one more time. It's multiple part, okay? What can we expect in the first 6 months on the job? What organizational changes would you make, if any? And what are your plans, if any, to reduce overtime costs within the police department?
Sure.
You got it?
Yes, I do.
All right.
Well, in the first 6 months is going to be interesting because there's a number of factors that the department faces. Through collective bargaining, as you guys know, we just took over, or the town just took over the desk shifts, if you will. So there's a process of hiring a number of dispatchers to cover those shifts. There's a process of learning the payroll system. It's my understanding from the chief last week, I was told that his administrative assistant is leaving us. So not only will you have a new chief, but the new chief will have a new administrative assistant. So everybody's going to have to learn on the job as far as that goes. So the first 6 months to get our feet wet, to get my feet wet, will be the priority of making sure that everybody understands what my priorities are. That when I speak to them or talk to them, that it's going to be on a personal level, so that they understand exactly what my philosophy will be
moving forward. I don't want any confusion. I don't want anybody to think this is how it was done before. Well, within the first 6 months, I would hope that they know that the way it's going to be done is the way that what's best for the department and what's best for the town, essentially. So that's my first 6 months I can accomplish those things. Organizational changes, I think it's critical, to be honest with you, that the department gets a clear second in command. Could be a theme that you've heard throughout the night tonight, because quite honestly, Sergeant Richmond, Sergeant Coppa, and myself, along with all the other sergeants, I think are all in agreement with that there needs to be a clear second in command with the department as far as the organizational portion of the department goes. I think it's critical to go from where you guys are at now, where we're at right now, from sergeant to chief, is quite a leap. In policing and in the military, it's patrol, it's sergeant, it's lieutenant, it's captain, it's deputy, it's chief. Not necessarily you have to have all those things, but there certainly needs to be a second in command. And I would have to go a little bit further in the second command. I think it would be important to me for that second in command to be out of the union. An organization like New Bedford, it's my understanding that they have their chief and deputy chief that are out of the union, but from their captains on down are all in the union. The chief, it's ideas off of somebody that's not necessarily has, I won't say an ulterior motive, but if he's part of the union, I think that's where their loyalty will lie. And the third part of the question, if you could repeat it for me.
It was overtime.
The overtime. We talked earlier, you guys talked earlier with the chief in regards to hiring part-timers. When I first started back in '92, part-time was what most of us did. And it was probably, we carried, I'd say, 6 or 7 part-time guys. And that was critical, and I'll tell you why it's critical, because I can give you, for instance, if we had those part-timers available to us right now, we have in service that all full-time officers have to go to for a week. 4 days to learn updates on laws, etc. One of those days is a firearms day, so it's 5 days a week. If you times 8 hours a day times 21 guys, and you come up with those hours, the difference between the average overtime rate for a police officer is right around $51. That's about the average overtime rate. And the chief is right here, you can correct me if I'm wrong. The part-timer is $21. If you could simply replace all these officers on in-service with a part-time officer, that can save you about $30,000 if my math is correct. That's $30,000 right there. We have 2 officers that are currently in the military that do guard duty. That's 2 weekends, 1 weekend a month, 1 or 2 weeks a year that they have to do. If you take their hours and you use that $30, which is what about the difference is between the overtime and what the part-time officer makes, and you add those hours in as many times as they're gone, you're talking another 20 grand, and you're looking at about $50,000 right there in savings. So it can be done. It certainly can be done. But I think part-time are essential for that to get done. But I will also say this: part-timers are not only beneficial for us to do that, but it also acts as like a farm system for us, because we're able to take those part-timers and we can see they're under no union obligation. We can see how they perform. And by being able to watch them, we know which candidates are the ones that are going to make it through the full-time academy and hopefully have a long career with our department. That's it.
You get 4 minutes left, you don't have to use them.
Very good.
Second question is a 5-minute question, and you'll get a 1-minute warning. And Selectman DeRoche.
Good evening.
Good evening.
How are you today?
I'm doing well. How you doing?
It's 2019 and technology is a part of our everyday life and in every aspect. What is your opinion of body cameras and dash cams? And do you have any intention of implementing them?
As I'm in favor of body cams, dash cams, because quite honestly, there's reports out there that you would think liability would increase with dash cams or body cams, but that's been quite the opposite. There's been more officers have been saved with body cams as far as liability goes or lawsuits go, simply because the complaints that have been coming in prior to body cameras and dash cameras, it's your word against the officer's word. Or if there's another officer, it's your word against a couple other officers. And the way that society has shifted today, and the complaints have increased, I can probably say that Acushnet hasn't, to be perfectly honest with you. But the body cams and the dash cams, I think, are a positive thing, and would be a positive thing for the town. The only issue that I would have would be cost. Westport, I'm friendly with the chief in Westport, and as of right now, they have the body cameras, but I don't think they have the money to implement them. The software to run the body cameras is quite a bit of money. But to answer your question, I'm not opposed to body cams or dash cams.
Very good, thank you.
Thank you. And you have time, but it sounds like you're good. Okay.
I'm good, thank you.
Question 3, Selectman Gaspar.
As chief of police, to whom do you believe you are first and foremost responsible?
As a chief of police, I'm first and foremost responsible to the town and my offices. It's a pretty simple question,
It
to be honest
is.
with you. That's all I have.
You got 4 minutes and 55 seconds.
I wish I could sit here and just blow smoke, but I won't do that to you guys.
No, it is pretty straightforward.
Yes.
And they're all just random.
Yeah, no.
That would just kind
I
of
get
whip
it.
them around and
Listen, you guys already threw a curveball when we started this because it was the chief's understanding that we were going in alphabetical order, so I was first and I was ready to go. And I ended up picking number 3, so
I'm
that
a
tells you.
brawl. I decided to shuffle it up. I would have been before you.
Listen, I would have been ready to go. Though, so.
All right, question 4, last question. This is open response, free form, 5 minutes, 1 minute warning. Do you have anything else to add to help us in our consideration of you for the role of police chief? 5 minutes.
What I would add right now, to be honest with you, is I think we're at a crossroads that I haven't seen in the past. And what I tell you is, I was here for Chief Poitras when he left and Chief Alves took over. When Chief Poitras was ready to retire and Chief Alves was going to take over, the dynamics of the police department were such. We were older, if you would. We weren't as young as we are now. And when Chief Alves took over and his 15 years, his tenure of 15 years, we've always been on that cusp of the majority of the department's older. We're not there now. As you can see, we just lost, we're going to lose another good young officer, Officer Pimentel. So these numbers are slightly skewed, but we are almost half of our department, as it's set right now with the 3 new guys that just came on the academy, have 5 years or less. I've been here for 28 years. That's never been the case. 5 years or less. If you want to go 10 years and less, we're probably talking 3/4 of the department. So I think it's critical for you guys now when you make a decision tonight that you look to somebody that's been here for a while. That you look for somebody that's been through this, as I have. I've been here for, again, 28 years. So I do think it's critical. We're at a critical time that you need somebody that has the experience that I have, that'll be able to mentor those younger people, and especially the sergeants, and as we move forward. But I think it's critical at this point that you choose somebody with some experience that can help move the department, which has been very good, to great.
You good? You have 3
I'm good.
minutes. 3 minutes left.
No,
Okay.
sir, I'm good.
Thank you. Thank you, Sergeant Coon.
Appreciate it.
You can invite the other sergeants to come
Sure.
back down if you want, or not, or...
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Thanks for the time. Thank you for everything. Thanks for the time. Nice to meet you.
Yeah, you too.
They outside?
Yeah, they're outside.
All right, so, yeah, wow. So, I mean, the piece that I don't have, that I've resisted having is a big part of this, and something we agreed to put a lot of weight on, is the assessment center. I don't know the assessment center rankings, and I didn't want to know the assessment center rankings until I met the officers and we did the other two pieces. I wanted to stay, I didn't want that to influence me at all. I wanted to read the written narratives, and I wanted to meet you all, and before I saw that, I didn't want that to skew me at all. So this is a big part of, and we agreed before we started this process that the assessment center, we were going to put a lot of weight on it, but not weight it entirely. So I guess with that said, drum roll please.
That's a secret, because neither one of them, I don't believe he knows what that is, and I don't know what this is either, so we're in the same boat as you three sergeants in the current chief.
You all,
We don't know what this is.
That's the list.
We know what the order is, yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Through civil service sends that to us.
So, Acushnet Police Promotional List, Police Chief, this is civil service. Number 1 was Christopher Richmond, number 2 was Thomas Carreau, number 3 was Gary Coppa, and the 3 of you here today. Number 4 was Keith Ashley, also participated in the process. My understanding that the gap between you was not that significant, that it was, I can't say that I understand the process well, but you all did pretty well, I guess is what I'll say. But, at the end of the day, they rank you, and I can't say that I really understand that process, but I know it was very intense and very competitive, and I suspect you worked for whatever you got on here. So congratulations to all of you. But I didn't want to look at this until I'd met all of you. But this is clearly a factor in the decision as it needs to be. And we've been, as a group, we started this process. We were briefed by town council on the civil service process and what our responsibilities were to the community, were to civil service, were to you all as participants in the process, and how we needed to manage this, and how we needed to deal with the results in this entire process. So, other comments, gentlemen? I know Mr. Gasper, you said you wanted to make some general comments about.
Yeah, I just, I think you just explained the process, how it went, gentlemen, right? This is a decision that us three are gonna make. For me, it's extremely difficult, because I know all 3 of you personally, right? I've known you guys from being on the board for 9 years now, and I know you from outside, and personally, I know you guys, and I know what job you've done for the police department over your careers, right? You've all been extremely instrumental, so I feel like no matter what I do, I'm doing the wrong thing, and I've been struggling with this since, I think the hardest part of my 9-year tenure was candidates night, when I was out there running, right? And you guys are in here kind of doing the same thing. You're making your pitch, right? And I'll be honest with you, this has been a struggle for me, trying to figure that decision out, right? Because I know all 3 of you pretty well. You're all great, commendable officers. I think our community, I think they'll all agree with that. Unfortunately, we can only pick one. The clear message tonight was something that I've been thinking about for some time. The chief's been drilling us, the current chief, Al's, has been drilling us as far as a second in command. That's something that I've had in my head for some time now. Given it consideration in the back of my own mind, not us really talking about that. I think that maybe after tonight, because all 3 of you mentioned that same topic, I think the spotlight's kind of on it now, and I think that it opens up the opportunity for dialogue. With that said, I hope that no matter what decision I make tonight, personally, we'll all still get along, right? This is difficult. It's extremely difficult for me. I don't know about these 2 guys here. They've known you less time than I've known you guys, and
we met tonight.
You're all phenomenal police officers. I commend all of our department. But you know what? You guys are sergeants. You've been sergeants for a long time. You've given this community 23+ years. All 3 of you, I believe, have 23+ years. That's commendable. I can't say enough about that. How you stuck to the community, and you never thought about going anywhere else. You stood it out, even though there's not a big opportunity for rank change, right? And that says a lot about all 3 of your characters. So for me, I know what the assessment center did, and I have to respect that assessment center. I also know that I read over the written questions, and, the assessment center had their rankings, and then I kind of ranked the 3 essay questions, right? And then all 3 of you come in, and I kind of have a little pecking order, and then all 3 of you come in, you get to the podium, and I'll be honest with you, I can't say that my feelings didn't kind of change between 2 and 3, and it's extremely difficult, and I wish you all the best of luck in the future, but unfortunately, this board can only choose one individual, and I'm stuck with that. So I'll leave the rest of
Mr. DeRoche, you want to make any general comments?
Sure. Well, as you might know, this is an issue I knew would be presented to me if I was elected selectman. For you officers who attended the Council on Aging, this was an issue in the campaign about promoting from within or taking from outside. And my stance has always been from promoting from within. You've presented yourself in a very professional manner, all 3 candidates. Chief has assured me during the campaign and even afterwards that all 3 candidates would be qualified to be the chief. So, as agreeing with Mr. Gaspar, it's a difficult decision, but the assessment center, I weigh that strongly in this decision, and we have to choose one, and so that's what I got to say.
Just one further, I lost it. I had something. Just general comment as I read the essay responses. I mean, I was very impressed with the fact that we had 3 really good candidates for the chief of police, and that as a community we couldn't go wrong. That all 3 of you are very qualified. Your years of service to our community and your personal credentials and your experience are all. I think as a community we'd be well served by all of you. And initially, these gentlemen remember I wanted to go out of civil service, and I wanted to look at a bigger picture to make sure we got the best possible candidate. And that wasn't a reflection on any of you. It was just me making sure we do the best for our community. And sitting here looking at what we've got now, I don't think we've been shortchanged. The 3 of you are all excellent candidates for chief of police, and I don't think we've missed any opportunity by not opening this up to the greater area. So thank you all. Thank you all. Who wants to go first?
I think we all went. I think the only thing these gentlemen are waiting for is ultimately for this board to make a decision, and it is. Look, I said it all, guys. I mean, I can't say it enough. You guys are really 3 great candidates. But if you're looking for a motion from someone, I'd have to agree with the assessment center and make a motion to hire Sergeant Chris Richmond as our next chief of police.
And I'll second that motion.
And just for discussion purposes, as I sat and I read the essays last night, and I read yours, and I didn't know what the ranks were. I was like, wow, this is really well done. And I didn't know what the ranks were. Nothing that you did here today changed my mind. I mean, as I read just that piece of the puzzle, I was very impressed by the package you put together and the narrative you put together. So that didn't surprise me much, but certainly would have made it harder if it was a different number, and that's what we were advised. So I'd endorse the motion and the second of the other 2 selectmen.
I would like to just say one thing for the other 2 candidates is this. It's a tough pill to swallow. I get it, right? But you're both great officers. I can't emphasize that enough. And just remember what you wrote in your essay questions to the board, right? I believe when I read these, I believe from my heart, you guys answered it from your heart, right? You had a lot of passion in your answers, and that's what meant a lot to me from both of you two, Sergeant Carreau and Sergeant Coppa, as well as Sergeant Richmond. When I read it, I really thought that you guys were writing from your heart, right? And that meant a lot to me, and that's why it got really personal with me because I felt that from you guys. And, you know, you talked about the younger ranks and things of that and getting that promotional list and showing the younger officers that there's room for advancement. And you all came up here tonight and talked about, you know, giving some responsibilities to others and, you know, maybe, I don't know how the real deal works. And, you know, instead of hogging responsibilities, I'm the sergeant, you know, you might take one of these guys under your wing and start showing them a little bit here and there. And that's what I got out of your essay questions is that you all felt the same way of doing that and bringing our younger staff up as once you guys were the young guys, right? So I hope that when you leave the room tonight that you keep that positive attitude and nothing changes when you walk out the door tonight because, again, you guys are extraordinary officers and you're extraordinary sergeants and you're looked up to, as Mr. Carreau stated when he was up here, that, what is it, you know, 50%, at least 50% of us, our crew are young now. So, and you guys know that as well. So, I mean, they're looking up to somebody, right? And it's you guys. You know what I mean? So please keep that positive attitude and keep that department moving forward. You guys have a beautiful police department. We have great men and women working in that police department. Just try to do your best to keep morale up and you know, look to the future. You know, Chris Richmond, you had said that about your dad. You know, don't fall down. You know, and if you fall down, you get yourself back up, and you know, you keep looking forward. And you know what I mean. Don't drag yourself through the dirt too much. And that was humbling to me. And I think that we all need to learn that lesson. And sometimes we get kicked in the face, we get thrown through the dirt or whatever. Let's get back up and be men and do our jobs, right? And I think that's what we're gonna do when the clock turns tomorrow and you guys report to work. I have to believe, knowing all three of you personally, that that's what's going to take place. I hope that Sergeant Carreau and Sergeant Coppa, you support the new chief, Chris Richmond. There's going to be dialogue with this board of what we're going to do, second in command and things of that nature, and rank structure that we need to start looking at because of the technological advances of policing, right? It's no longer, you know, you get a call, you know, and the guy's drinking a beer on the corner of the road. Is, you know, you get cyber security and all these other things where there's a much bigger role to be played now. So I think that, you know, the new chief's gonna start looking at this and maybe breaking that down and defining responsibilities and you know, hopefully we're gonna all grow and mature together. So again, I commend you all. I truly do. I could stay here all night and you know.
And he will. If I don't jump in.
It isn't going to matter. It isn't going to change anything. I got that, guys. I just want you guys to walk out with your chin up because you're both commendable men. And if I could pick all three of you, let me make it clear right now. If I could pick all three of you, I'd pick all three of you. That's how I feel. Okay. That's it. Thank you.
Motion. Thank you. We had a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm an aye. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
And gentlemen, thank you all.
Unique.
Thank you. Good luck. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Way to go.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thanks.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right, Mark. Yeah.
Thanks very much. A lot of anxiety in these things.
Thank you, man.
Awesome. Thank you.
This is one of those you'll have your eyes are open all night.
Chief?
Thank you very much.
Sergeant Richmond?
Chief Richmond.
Yes.
You're going to have...
We'll be in touch.
You're gonna have some time, you know that the chief's an interim for
Yes.
24 hours a week, so we feel that it's a successful transition, so you have some time. We've negotiated with him on an interim basis to work 24 hours a week, whatever's needed. I guess the chief will come back to the board if he needs more time,
Yeah.
Depending on the circumstances, because all of the personnel changes right now, so if it warrants it and the board deems that it's warranted, we'll adjust from there, but just so you know, you have time for that transition, so don't feel like, you know, tomorrow you're hitting the road. I mean, we gotta figure out a contract, right?
Perfect.
So-
Yeah, that's the next step. We're gonna start that discussion.
Okay. All right.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief.
Okay, so old business, none.
That was difficult, I can tell you.
Yeah, it was
Very difficult.
It was
It's a very difficult choice.
Ugh.
Look, and you know, I said it, and I have to emphasize that, because I want everybody at home to understand that there are three great police officers. I mean, you couldn't go wrong, like you said, against the McGraw, you can't really go wrong with people.
When it's the assessment center.
And they weren't far apart.
No,
No?
It wasn't like it's a landslide and, you know,
Sergeant Richmond at number one, based on the materials he submitted, I mean, just a bang-up job with his written narrative. And the fact that he was number one didn't really surprise me. I was so impressed by what he wrote. But if his number hadn't been number one, you know, we would have had some great candidates.
I think taking the road of the assessment center took the politics out of it.
Took some pressure off.
Took some politics out of it and made it a refined process that all the candidates went through.
Yep.
So.
All right, moving on. Department of Public Works, nothing. Town Administrator's report. Ms. Hebert, you have nothing? Good. Selectmen announcements, anybody want to announce anything?
Maybe we should say that, excuse me, I was a little teary. Parade is going to be at 5:30 instead of, I think it's usually 6:30 or 7. It's going to be at 5:30 on Thursday.
At the fire station.
At the fire, it starts at
is
10
that the
o'clock.
highway parade or the Halloween parade?
No, Halloween. No, sorry, Halloween.
Halloween.
The Halloween parade will be at 5:30 on Thursday. Starts at Town Hall. You have a little rope they go, and then it stops at the fire department.
Speaking of
They go
Halloween,
through, they have their little,
It's optional for us, right? We don't have to dress up.
no, you don't have to go. You don't have to go.
Oh, I dress up.
Next Selectmen's meeting is Tuesday, November 12th at 5 PM. And we have an executive session tonight to begin considering the contract for our new police chief. So I need a motion to go into executive session, please.
What is the official?
Yeah, there are official words. There are official words we need to read, right?
You don't have to.
Yeah, just look at the agenda.
I'll make a motion to go into executive session under General Law 30A subsection 21A2 to conduct strategy sessions and preparations for negotiations with non-personnel police chief, and the board will not return to public session.
I believe this is the yes vote?
This is the yes vote?
Yes.
Roll call vote. Selectman DeRoche?
Yes.
Selectman Gaspar?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. We are going to executive session, not to return into open session. And we are adjourned in regular session. Thank you.